Hey man, let's get one thing straight. If a woman is ignoring you, it's not always because she's busy. In fact, in most cases, it's not about time at all. It's about power. Women know that attention is currency. They know men crave it, chase it, and sometimes even build their self-worth around whether or not they're getting it from her. So when she withholds it, she's not just going silent, she's seeing what you'll do when she creates a void. Will you panic? Will you double text? Will you spiral into self-doubt and try harder to get her to notice you? If you do, you feed her ego. You give her exactly what she wants, the validation of knowing she can control your emotional state without lifting a finger. But when you don't respond the way she expects, when you maintain your frame and flip the power dynamic, that's when her ego takes a hit. Lowering a woman's ego when she's ignoring you isn't about revenge, it's about shifting the balance. You see, women test boundaries not just through what they say, but through what they don't say. Silence is one of the most powerful psychological weapons they have, because the human mind hates uncertainty. Most men can't sit with that discomfort. They feel compelled to clear the air, to seek reassurance, to make sure she's not mad or losing interest. But every time you go chasing her silence, you teach her that ignoring you works. She learns that if she ever wants more control in the dynamic, all she has to do is pull away, and you'll run right after her. Breaking this pattern means you need to stop rewarding withdrawal. You don't meet her silence with desperation, you meet it with indifference. Indifference is what truly chips away at her ego, because women expect male validation by default. In her world, most men bend over backwards for her attention, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and rearrange their schedules just to be in her orbit. When you're different, when you don't bite at the bait, she starts to question her influence over you. And here's the thing, women don't like losing influence over men they found attractive. They don't just shrug and move on, they replay the interaction in their minds, wondering why their usual tactics aren't working. That wondering creates curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. If you want her ego to shrink, don't fight for her attention, force her to fight for yours. Now, some men think lowering her ego means being cold, rude, or overly aggressive, but that's not the move. When you lash out or try to punish her for ignoring you, you're still giving her the emotional reaction she wanted in the first place. You're still showing her that her silence has power over you. The real power move is detachment, living in a way that makes it clear her lack of communication hasn't changed a thing in your world. You're still out enjoying yourself, still pursuing your goals, still meeting new people. You're sending the message, I don't need you to be complete. And when she senses that her absence didn't cause chaos in your life, that's when the mirror turns back on her and her ego takes the hit. The first practical step is to stop chasing explanations. When she pulls away, don't go fishing for reasons. Don't send a "hey, what's wrong?" text. Don't create a dramatic conversation to force her to explain herself. That's the trap. She wants you to believe her attention is the prize, and by chasing the reason for her withdrawal, you confirm that belief. Instead, you create space. You let the silence stretch longer than she's comfortable with. You don't break it, you let her do that. And when she finally does, you don't meet it with accusations or relief. You meet it with calm, almost casual energy, as if you barely noticed she was gone. That's the moment she realizes her tactics didn't work, and her ego takes another step down. When you maintain that calm and detached posture, something subtle but very real happens in her mind. She starts wondering if she overestimated her place in your life. This is a mental shift that can't be forced by words. It has to be felt. Most women who ignore men do so because they assume the man is emotionally invested enough to tolerate it. But when your lack of reaction contradicts that assumption, you create a cognitive dissonance she can't ignore. On one hand, her ego tells her she's the prize. On the other, your behavior is telling her she might not matter as much as she thought. This internal conflict is uncomfortable for her, and discomfort is the first crack in any inflated ego. It forces her to seek reassurance, not the other way around. The danger most men face in this stage is breaking the silence too early out of impatience. They hold their ground for a day or two, but then they start overthinking. What if she's talking to another guy? What if she's losing interest for good? That fear pushes them to reach out, undoing all the work they've done to lower her ego. You need to understand that the process of reversing the power dynamic isn't instant. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, depending on her personality and the level of control she's used to having. The longer you can maintain your composure, the more she feels the weight of your absence. Every day she doesn't hear from you, her mind becomes more restless, and the ego she was protecting starts to shrink. The second practical step is to quietly improve yourself during her absence. This is where most men miss an opportunity. They use the time to sit around and wait, maybe scrolling through her social media, trying to decode her posts. Wrong move. Instead, you use that silence as fuel. Hit the gym harder, upgrade your wardrobe, dive into a personal project you've been neglecting. Socialize more, not for the sake of making her jealous, but to genuinely remind yourself that your life is rich with or without her. When she eventually comes back around, and trust me, most women will, she'll find a man who hasn't been stagnant. That contrast alone delivers a blow to her ego, because it tells her that her absence wasn't the center of your world. Here's the third step. Master the art of controlled engagement. When she finally breaks her silence, don't give her the warm, eager reception she's expecting. Most men roll out the red carpet at this stage, validating her belief that she can vanish and reappear without consequence. Instead, you engage with measured energy. You respond, but you're not overly available. You answer, but not instantly. Your tone stays neutral, polite, but not invested. This subtle shift in dynamic sends a powerful subconscious message. I'm not holding a grudge, but I also haven't been waiting around. That neutrality is what really unsettles her ego, because it forces her to realize she no longer has the same emotional control over you. One of the most underestimated tools in lowering a woman's ego is unpredictability. When she can easily predict your reactions, she can manipulate the dynamic at will. But when you start acting in ways that break her expectations, when she can't read you as easily, that's when her confidence in her power starts to waver. This doesn't mean you play childish games or purposely create drama. It means you live authentically in a way that isn't centered on her. Some days you might reply quickly because you happen to be free. Other days you might take hours because you're genuinely busy. That rhythm keeps her ego from inflating back to the level it was when she assumed you'd always be there, waiting for her attention. Now we need to address something most men don't realize. When a woman ignores you, she's not just testing your patience, she's testing your self-image. She wants to see if you define yourself through her recognition. If your mood shifts based on whether she acknowledges you, then she knows she has the strings to your puppet. But when you operate from a self-image that's rooted in who you are, not who notices you, she can't pull those strings anymore. That's when her ego gets rattled, because a man who isn't swayed by her silence is a man she can't fully control. And women, whether they admit it or not, are far more attracted to men they can't control than those they can. You also need to understand that ignoring you is often about comparison. She's subconsciously measuring your reaction against the reactions of other men she's ignored in the past. If every other guy became more eager, more desperate, more apologetic, and you respond with quiet dignity and calm, you stand out like a different breed entirely. And the moment you stand out, you become more valuable. You move from the category of predictable male attention into the category of rare and hard to figure out. And trust me, that shift makes her ego wobble because she's used to feeling like she's the one evaluating men, not the one being evaluated. Another powerful ego-lowering tactic is the absence of emotional theatrics. Most women expect that if they push you far enough, through silence, delayed replies, or cold behavior, you'll eventually crack and confront them with some passionate outburst. And while they'll act annoyed in that moment, part of them feeds off the drama. It reaffirms their importance in your life. But when you refuse to give them that drama, when you keep your emotional energy steady, no matter what they do, they're left with an uncomfortable void. They can't get the ego boost of, I can make him lose control. And without that ego boost, they have to reassess where they stand with you. Silence in return is a discipline, not a game. It's the decision to allow space to speak for itself. It's resisting the urge to prove you're unbothered by posting cryptic social media updates or indirectly showing off your life to get her attention. That's still feeding her ego because it's still about her. True ego disruption happens when you're not performing at all, when you're just living, completely detached from her narrative. She's expecting you to try to signal something, and when you don't, she's left in uncertainty. And uncertainty is the natural enemy of an inflated ego. Here's where most men fail. They confuse lowering her ego with making her jealous. They start posting photos with other women, tagging themselves at clubs, or dropping hints that they're moving on. While that can create a reaction, it doesn't actually lower her ego in the long run, because it still validates her central role in your behavior. She'll just think, he's doing this because of me. The far more powerful approach is to genuinely redirect your focus toward things that have nothing to do with her. Travel, fitness, business, hobbies, friendships, things that enrich your life regardless of her existence. When she sees that, it cuts deeper, because it means she's not even the catalyst for your momentum anymore. The ego hit comes from the realization that she no longer has the monopoly on your attention. And this is where attraction subtly starts to shift back in your favor. You see, women often inflate their ego by believing they are the most exciting part of your life. When your life is full of other exciting elements that have nothing to do with her, she's forced to confront the possibility that she's replaceable, not in a spiteful way, but in a factual, unshakable reality. That thought alone can cause her to come back just to re-establish her sense of importance. One of the strongest moves you can make in this situation is to be the same man she first wanted before she got comfortable. Remember, when she first noticed you, it wasn't because you were chasing her, it was because you were being yourself, living your life, and she happened to cross paths with you. Somewhere along the way, most men start shifting into maintenance mode, putting more energy into keeping her than into being the man she wanted in the first place. The moment you shift back to that original energy, the energy of a man on his own path, you remind her that her comfort with ignoring you is misplaced. There's a deeper psychological layer here. Many women ignore as a form of self-protection to avoid vulnerability. They create space because they fear emotional exposure, and the ego acts as a shield. When you don't chase them, you're not only lowering the ego, you're forcing them to sit with their own fears. This can lead to two possible outcomes. She either retreats entirely because she's not ready to drop the shield, or she comes back, realizing she has to put in effort if she wants to keep you in her life. Either way, your self-respect remains intact, and her ego isn't being inflated on your time. Patience is your ally in this. The longer you can go without chasing, the deeper the ego wound goes, not because you're trying to hurt her, but because you're refusing to feed the dynamic where she gets to control you through neglect. This patience communicates a simple but powerful truth. I am not moved by scarcity, and once she understands that, her entire perception of you changes. She can no longer use the same tactics she's used on dozens of other men, because you've proven they don't work on you. That realization humbles even the most self-assured women. Your silence, combined with your thriving life, forces her to recalibrate. Now, when she finally does reach out, she'll approach differently. There will be more politeness in her tone, more effort in her words, and more consistency in her actions. Why? Because her ego has been reminded that she doesn't automatically have your attention, and that if she wants it, she has to earn it. That's the shift you want. It's not about making her feel bad, it's about creating a relationship dynamic where respect flows both ways. Even if she never comes back, you still win because you've developed a habit of not rewarding bad behavior. You've trained yourself to resist chasing after women who don't value you in the moment. And that standard will serve you in every future interaction, because women can sense when a man has boundaries. They can sense when a man won't bend himself out of shape just to keep them interested. That boundary alone is magnetic. It signals strength, stability, and self-worth, all of which are deeply attractive to women. Lowering her ego also protects you from emotional manipulation in the future. Once a woman learns that her silence doesn't control you, she stops using it as a tool. She might try other tests, but each one will have less and less power because you've set the precedent that you're not moved by emotional games. And here's the thing. This doesn't just make her respect you more, it makes you respect yourself more. You're no longer a man who gets pulled off his center by someone else's mood. You're grounded, and women gravitate toward grounded men. It's also important to know that some women will act offended or accuse you of being cold when you don't respond to their ignoring with pursuit. That's just the ego lashing out, trying to regain control. Don't fall for it. If she's genuinely interested, she'll adjust her approach. If she's not, she'll drift away. And either way, you've filtered out someone who is comfortable disrespecting your time and attention. That's not a loss, it's a win. At the end of the day, lowering a woman's ego when she's ignoring you comes down to one principle: value yourself more than you value her attention. When you live by that rule, everything else falls into place. You won't overreact to silence, you won't feed the cycle of withdrawal and pursuit, and you won't let someone else's validation determine your worth. That's the mindset of a man who's not just attractive in the short term, but magnetic in the long term. So remember, her ignoring you is just a move in a psychological chess game. Most men play checkers. They react to every move without thinking about the long-term strategy. But you're not most men. You understand that the real power is in restraint, in holding your position, in letting her come to you. And when she does, it won't be because you begged, chased, or proved yourself. It will be because you stood firm, lived well, and made her realize that her ego can't survive without your presence. That's how you win without ever having to raise your voice or lift a finger.